Welcome. In this video, we're going to be starting to sew together the two pieces of our monster, so the front and back. So you can see I've got my front, I have all my accessories. You can see I've got my running stitch here, I've got my embroidery, and then here's the back side that it's just plain, nothing on either side. We're gonna be matching them up and then sewing them together. Okay, to help me, I have also got my scissors. We'll be using those, but for now we'll set them aside. And I also, as you can see, have my thread. I'm going to put it up to the top here. Now we're going to start by matching up our front and our back. We're going to get them as close as we can. Okay, we want it to be exact wherever we can. Okay, and you can see they line up really nicely. Now, you can see that I've got all of my knots, all of my stitches on the inside. We're doing that so it looks nice and neat. Okay, now I'm going to take my needle and thread. You can see that I have my needle threaded all ready to go. Okay, and at the opposite end, I've already made my sewing knot nice and firm. Should be big enough to hold it in place. So, I'm going to go ahead. Now, we still want to keep all of our knots invisible on the outside of our project. So what that means is I'm actually going to keep it in between my front and back layers. Okay, it's going to be completely invisible. So get it matched back up again. And what I'm now going to do is my knot is going to sneak between the two layers. Okay, so you can see there how the string is coming out, but you can't see the knot. So grab my needle, and I'm going to peel back just a little bit. I'm going to go maybe a 1/4 inch away from that outer edge. Okay, but peel back just the top layer, and I'm going to poke my needle through. Okay, and as I do that, you can see it's going to hide my knot between the two layers. Okay, that when I push it closed again, there's my knot. Push it closed, and you can't see it on the back side. So, there we go. Nice and invisible. Now, we're just going to be going around the outside edge. I'm going to leave that top part open so that we can come back later, and that's where we are going to stuff our monster. Okay, we need to leave that hole so we can get the fluff in. So I'm going to go from that point all the way around the outside edge until I get to about the same point on the opposite side of his head and leave that hole for me to stuff it with. Okay, so here we go. We are going to start by just doing a basic running stitch. Okay, so I'm going to go straight through both layers, front and back. Okay, flip it to the back side, make sure I'm keeping my stitches straight, and do the exact same thing. Just go from back to front. Now I'm on the front side, so I'll go from front to back. And you can see as I'm doing this, I'm starting to get my nice dotted line. That means I'm doing my running stitch correctly. Okay, on the back, so we're going from back to front. And we're going to go from front to back again. I'm going to speed it up really quick. So as you can see, I've come to the end of my thread. I've got just enough left over to tie it off with. Okay, now I'm on the outside of my monster right now. What I'm going to need to do is sneak that thread between my layers so that it's still invisible. Okay, so to do that, I am going to go one more stitch forward, but I am only going through that back layer of the fabric. I'm not going the whole way through to the front. Okay, sneak it through. And here we're going to do something interesting, that because we're using felt and the felt is a little bit extra big, extra thick, we're actually going to do our anchor stitch. We're only going to go about halfway through the felt, which sounds a little confusing, but we're going partway through the layer of fabric so that we're making our stitch, but it's going to still be completely invisible on the back side. Here, let me show you. You can see my stitch, but when I flip it to the back, can't see the needle at all. Okay, so we've done that correctly. It's looking good. I'm going to go ahead and pull my needle through, and now I'm ready to tie my knot the same as we've been doing all along. So, right, we can still see no stitch visible on the back side. I am going to put my needle underneath my last stitch, take my thread, wrap it around the needle, and that'll actually make a knot right on that last stitch. Okay, oh, there we go. Now we've got it through the loop. Okay, pull it tight, and we'll do that 2 more times. Okay, so again, under that last stitch, wrap my thread around my needle, pull it through so it's nice and snug. There we go. Oh, a little bit more. There we go. Okay. And one more. It will just pull it through. Get my needle to go through that loop of my thread. And get it nice and tight. And now I am ready to come in with my scissors and trim off the extra. Okay, now to start up my next stitch, what we're going to do is obviously we need a new thread. So I've got my thread here that I'm going to tie my sewing knot. That, remember, grab the end, wrap it around so you get that X, and just push it off the tip of your finger, and as it rolls, pull it tight, and there you go. There is your sewing knot. Okay, now opposite end, I'm going to go ahead, grab my needle, fold my thread over the needle so I get that tiny little loop, and put that loop through the eye of my needle. And guys, that's always so much easier than just trying to stab it through. Fold it over. It works miracles. Okay? And here we go. Looks like we are ready to start sewing again. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of fold my monster body so that my leg matches up to where my last stitch came through the back, but not the front. Okay, so you can see that's where I'm folding it. Lines up right there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to match my needle up so that it's going through the front as if it had come the whole way through. I know, we're so sneaky. We're so sneaky. Pull it through that front side. Make sure that my knot is tucked in the whole way. And if my tail's too long, I'm just going to trim it a little bit. My knot's still there though, so it'll keep it nice and firm. See, there's my knot. But go ahead, pull that nice and snug. And then I am ready to start my sewing process. Just like I was doing before. That'll be my running stitch. So I'm on the front. I'll go from front to back. And I've got a few extra layers here, so sometimes that makes it just a little bit extra tricky. But there we go. Front to back. And now we're on the back, so we'll go from back to front. And keeping those layers matched up. Okay, and I'm gonna do this going the rest of the way around. You can see it's lining up really nice. Okay, and on the back, it's a completely, like, the running stitch looks perfect. There is no gap in it. So we're gonna go all the way until we get to that top part. We'll stop so that we have space to stuff it. Okay, so you can see we've made it to the end of my thread at the top. Okay, so gonna do what I did before, that I've still got that gap there, which is great. Okay, so I'm gonna slowly fold back my top so that I'm only going through that top layer so that my thread is now between my layers. Okay, pull that snug. And then I'm going to, just like I did before, I'm only going part way through that layer of felt so that my needles isn't visible on the front side, but inside I'm going to be making a stitch. Okay, pull it through. And I've got that last stitch there that is now ready for me to tie my knot. So I'll go ahead and do that. Go under that last stitch, loop my thread around my needle, and pull it through so it's nice and snug. Okay. And here we go. We'll do it 2 more times. Wrap that thread around my needle, pull it through. And 1 more. Perfect. Get that wrapped around. Okay, pull it through. Now that I've done that, I am good to pull it all the way tight, grab my scissors and trim off the extra. And you guys can see as I'm finishing this up, and don't be afraid to get close to that, just don't cut the actual knot. But as you can see, I've still got that little hole there that I'm going to be using, right? So I've got my stitches going the whole way around, got my hand in that gap, there we go. Gonna go in and use that hole to put in all the stuffing. You can see there where it's going through, okay? That'll be our next video, is how to stuff your monster. See ya.